Brothers and sisters, welcome to day 4 of our Advent series, Worshipping a Hidden God. We want to still speak a little bit before we get to today's real topic, but I want to finish up about this theme about the great spiritual paradox that part of reaching the heights of heaven is this journey of descent. And what is this descent? Well, really, it's the descent in our misery, in our nothingness. What does that mean? Well, it's the descent to discover that really I am nothing without God. That all that is good in me is because it comes from Him, and that I can cooperate with Him only because He gives me grace to cooperate with Him. And that, in other words, that He is moving and working within me to the extent to make me really free, which is to really to move with Him. That's what freedom is. Freedom is to move with grace and to come alive in grace. And so God activates, you could say, our deepest will and desires and our deepest knowledge, and he infuses knowledge within our intellect, and all of this makes us more incredibly human. But in this journey, this journey to allow Him to be allow ourselves to be wide open for Him to do this work in us, we need to absolutely become humble. And that's the real theme of today. Humility will attract God's mercy. We'll return to that in a few seconds. But this idea that the descent is the descent to discover that we're nothing. So you hear saints talking about descending into our misery, into our nothingness, which is really just to discover your complete need for God. So therefore to reach out to God in humility and call upon Him. And the Lord allows us to have this experience because we flourish when we're humble. We flourish when we turn toward the Lord. And so part of this descent, the Lord might allow us to experience this misery, to experience our need for Him, to experience a moment where we have to cry out to Him. And that is when, in those moments, we could feel very much abandoned by God. We could feel that this road that we set out to journey to God, that we feel we're going backwards. And this is because we might feel dry in prayer. We feel we're accomplishing nothing when we pray. We feel that all our vices are just coming on top of us. We're seeing our weaknesses. No matter how much you pray, you seem to be getting worse. Well, yes, that means your prayers are working. Your prayer, in fact, is showing you your weakness so that you could really be healed at a more fundamental level. Healed at the level where you need God. Because we could go through life and not fall into grave sin, someone might be going along, but then fall into an even greater sin of pride. That parable of the story Jesus says about the man who's following the law, following all the religious things very well. He's in the temple, but he's really looking at himself and he's telling God, look how great I am. I haven't fallen into mortal sin. I haven't done blah, 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 blah. And then this man who's big sinner, who's done everything wrong, but comes in, but has real humility and wants to change his life. He turns to God and he says, Lord, have mercy on me, I'm a sinner. He doesn't say much, he doesn't babble much, but he has the right attitude before God. And so you could say that he found the descent, he found his misery, he found his complete need for God. While this other guy who's so religious and does all the things, but doing it with the wrong heart, doing it for the wrong reasons, is not right with God. And so this descent then, the Lord will allow us to discover our weaknesses. And the point is, Archbishop Martinez is saying this is a grace. And it doesn't seem like it at the time, but if we're seeking God and trying to do His will, and we keep feeling we're going backwards or like we just see all these temptations battering around us, it's hard to see how this is a grace. You actually feel in these moments that you're the worst person on earth. You feel a million miles away from God. You feel like you shouldn't go to pray. You feel unworthy in God's presence. And this, all the saints pass through this. This is a fundamental part of the spiritual journey, that where everything seems like it's falling apart and you're going backwards. But it's precisely in this moment, if we could persevere and keep going. And the difference is that if we keep going, then God will surprise us with a whole new freedom, because then when He knows that we are humble enough, He will then be able to fill us up. So this is why Archbishop Martinez says, someday we shall understand that among the greatest graces God has given us in our life are precisely those disconcerting ones, which make us think that God is abandoning us, when on the contrary, He is attracting us. Those which cause us to judge that we're falling away from our own ideals and and our own ideas of sanctity. When on the contrary, we're drawing near to the sweet goal of our hopes. So this is it. The Lord may make you feel like, gosh, you're further away from your goal to be a saint, but that's because you're actually discovering a holy thing. Like you're discovering that, you're discovering what you always were, but you were maybe pretending to yourself that you were much better than you were, but we're really stench. We're really nothing. And this is not something bad and morose and meant to be like a doormat and putting yourself down. This is not what he's talking about. He's saying that when you have this attitude, but you turn it to God, then that's freedom. Then you realize God is everything. His mercy is so big. His goodness is so big. His love is enormous when you discover your nothingness. Because you then realize, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, how humility attracts mercy. You then realize how merciful he is when he meets your nothingness.